Welcome back, everybody, to State of the Nation with me, Matt Goodwin. Now, it's been revealed that Sir Keir Starmer's government is going to pour hundreds of millions of pounds of your money into the China-sympathising World Health Organization. It seems that Labour has forgotten how disastrously the WHO handled the COVID pandemic. But this move raises broader questions that I want to talk about tonight, namely how much of your money is being wasted on these globalist institutions. Now, my next guest has revealed a fascinating number, a staggering number. I mean, this number is so big, it's hard to make sense of, but suggests that £85 billion of your money, 85 billion, has been poured into globalist organisations since 2009, since the financial crisis, with another £7.5 billion per year lined up until the year 2027, including the IMF and the World Bank. Who cares about the NHS crisis? Who cares about the social care crisis? Who cares about the immigration crisis? But this funding could actually be used for a 1% tax cut to you on the basic rate, giving you more of your money. Now, I'm joined by Media Campaign Manager at the Taxpayers Alliance, William Yarwood, to discuss this. William, I saw your thread on X and I thought these numbers can't be right. £86 billion since 2009. The number's so big, you say billion, but 86 billion. I mean, where's the money gone?
Where's the money gone? Well, first of all, Matthew, thanks for having me on the show the evening. And this is all part of research we at the Taxpayers Alliance did just a few years ago. We ran a campaign called Global Quangos Uncovered, where we did a lot of research into things like the IMF, the World Bank, the World Health Organization. Right. And like you said, the figures we found were quite stunning. If I could just break down a few of the numbers for you. The World Health Organization was receiving around £168 million of taxpayers' cash in 2022 alone. The World Bank received over £1.5 billion of taxpayers' cash in 2022. The IMF received about £2.1 billion. And that's not to mention places like the COP, which is obviously the UN Climate Summit, where ministers jet set to that conference every single year, costing taxpayers hundreds of thousands of pounds, with actually the former disgraced Scottish Minister Humza Yousaf billing taxpayers over £100,000 for a 6-day gig at that conference. So it's costing taxpayers millions, billions of pounds, and quite frankly, this money could be better spent at home on tax cuts, on our NHS and a variety of other issues.
I have often made the argument that when you look at things like foreign aid, 15 billion that we spend every year on foreign aid, 15.5 billion, but we're treating British people in hospital corridors, hospital car parks. We have people dying in the National Health Service, not able to have a private room, surrounded by their loved ones, crowded corridors, but we're sending all this money elsewhere. And what you're saying is we're also sending it to these Quangos, these quasi non-governmental organisations that aren't accountable to voters. Now, just explain to me, like I don't know anything about these things. Where is this money going? What is it being spent on? Why are we giving the IMF billions? Why are we giving the World Bank billions? What are they spending it on?
Sure. So there's a variety of things here. When it comes to, for example, the World Bank, a lot of that goes towards their climate finance. What the World Bank does is, ever since they've been set up, they've actually moved towards being obsessed with net zero zealotry, mainly actually in the developing world, because of course the thing the developing world needs most is solar farms and wind farms rather than actual, running water and working roads. And a lot of that money from the World Bank actually completely disappeared. Oxfam found out that $41 billion of that money has just disappeared into thin air on climate projects, unaccounted for. There's been no billing. There's been no details about it because they've got awful public records. So it's going into net zero zealotry into the World Bank, which they
this is corruption.
Oh yeah, I think a lot of it is, Matthew. Indeed, when it comes to the IMF, it goes to things such as their business confidence index, which the IMF actually changed. Although they deny it, of course, they changed it to give China a more favourable rating in 2022. When it comes to the World Health Organization, we actually just gave them a lump sum so that they can do whatever they like with it.
Well, here's a game I play when I can't sleep. I imagine that I've been made Prime Minister and I can do whatever the hell I want to do. Now, if I was to follow Donald Trump's line, I would say, OK, an immediate pause on all spending on supranational Quangos that are not accountable to voters. Now, if we were to do something like that, per year, how much would that sort of save us in cash?
Well, in terms of, as you mentioned earlier, about 7.5 billion, I think it would be around that, although obviously those figures are from a few years ago, so the figure is likely to be a little higher. As we've seen just recently, the World Health Organization is getting an extra 310 million over the next 4 years. So obviously you add those figures in. If you say don't send ministers to the climate conference at the UN, you save a couple of thousand when it comes to saving on travel and actually indeed on air emissions, which they supposedly care about.
So 7.5 7.5, let's say 7.5 to 10 billion a year. Now, we just smashed British pensioners in this country to save 1.5 billion. So let's actually say we're not going to send money to these international Quangos. We're not going to fund these swanky conferences and these private jets. And look, in my earlier life as an academic, I went to a couple of these events. And I mean, it's obscene, actually, what happens at these things, champagne, etc., etc. What we could do is let's bring some of that money back here. You know, I like to say, let's fix Britain first before we spend money elsewhere. Well, why can't we start doing this? I mean, what would it take for, say, a party at the next election to put into its manifesto, OK, we're going to have an immediate pause on NGO, international Quango funding. We're going to bring that money back home. Would we be breaking laws if we did that, or could we actually just make that decision? So
the issue is to do with foreign aid specifically. So a lot of this global Quango money gets funneled through our foreign aid budget, and we have a legal obligation from 2015 to spend about 0.7% on foreign aid. So I just repeal that immediately. I just repeal that immediately.
Yeah, sorry, we've got to fix the NHS and social care.
Absolutely. And also when it comes to foreign aid more broadly, I mean, you mentioned how pensioners have been slammed. Let's talk about farmers for a second. We at the TPA found that foreign farms via foreign aid funding are getting over £500 million a year just on a handful of projects. All the while, Rachel Reeves is slamming farmers with the new family farms tax. And how much they're going to raise? About £500 million. So actually, that funding needs to be cut, and actually British farmers need to be put first. So, but on a more deeper point, if I may, Matthew, it would take a lot of spine from our political class to do that, which I don't think they have. And I think actually when it comes to the global Quangocracy and the funding of the global Quangocracy, there's an element to which it's actually part of our political elite's governing philosophy. It's to appease international bureaucrats. It's to appeal people on the world stage. Keir Starmer loves this. I mean, look at the amount of trips Keir Starmer's taken since he's become Prime Minister. So, to be honest with you, our current Prime Minister is not going to do this, but any future leader, whether it's in the Tories or Reform or other parties, needs to be bold on this. And actually, I think it would be a highly popular policy to say, actually, we're going to pause foreign aid funding and we're going to put farmers, pensioners, the National Healthcare Service, low taxes first.
Well, thank you, William. I was struck by polling this week which showed that I think 64% of Brits said they would like to reduce foreign aid spending. And I imagine the number would be even higher if we said, let's reduce that to spend it on the National Health Service.